Good morning and welcome to the Daily Light Devotion. I hope all of you have had a wonderful Friday and looking forward to today, that is the 14th of March. Today we're going to look at Deuteronomy chapter 23, 24, 25 and Mark chapter 14, verses 15 to 72 in the New Testament. Um, in the Old Testament, Deuteronomy chapter 23, 24, 25, the chapter's theme is holiness, compassion, and righteous justice. In these chapters, the book of Deuteronomy, Moses continues teaching Israel how to live as a holy community. The laws address purity, fairness, compassion for the vulnerable, and justice in daily life. These instructions reveal God's concern for both holiness and mercy, and ultimately they point forward to Jesus, who perfectly fulfills God's law and teaches his followers to live with righteousness and love. Deuteronomy 23, the chapter emphasizes the purity and respect within the community of God's people. Right. Some of the instructions include maintaining purity within the assembly of Israel. Right. Keeping the camp clean because God walks among his people, and protecting vulnerable individuals such as escaped slaves. Avoiding dishonest and immoral practices. So these commands show that God desires a people who reflect his holiness. In the New Testament, Jesus teaches the holiness begins in the heart, not just external rules. Though through Christ, believers are invited into restored relationship with God, where purity and integrity flows from transformed hearts. So God's presence calls his people to live holy and honorable lives. Deuteronomy chapter 24, the chapter contains laws about relationship, justice, and care for the poor. Uh, the important instructions include fair treatment in marriage and family matters, justice for workers and the vulnerable, leaving portions of the harvest in the field for foreigners, orphans, and widows. So God reminds Israel that they were once slaves in Egypt and they should therefore show compassion to others. Um, Jesus consistently showed compassion to the poor and the outsiders and the oppressed. His ministry reflects the very heart behind these laws, right? Chapter 25, we see these chapters emphasize the fairness and the honesty in society, right? Fair judgment in legal disputes, kind treatment for working animals, and honest weights and measures in business. God condemns dishonest practice and reminds his people that integrity matters in everyday life. Right? Jesus later condemns hypocrisy and injustice amongst religious leaders. He calls his followers to live lives marked by truth, fairness, and integrity. Right? True righteousness affects every part of our lives, including how we treat each other. Sorry. So God calls his people to holiness. Compassion matters to God, and integrity is essential to be part of God. When we are walking with God, justice and honesty reflects God's character. So, moving over to the New Testament, Mark chapter 14, verses 51 to 71, the theme is faithfulness in the face of rejection. In these passages, Jesus Christ is arrested, is taken before the religious leaders. While Jesus remains faithful and speaks the truth, his disciples scatter and even deny him. Right, and but the section we see Jesus's courage and faithfulness with human, also human weakness reminds us that salvation depends on Christ, not human strength. Mark chapter 14, verses 51 and 52, we see the young man who fled. As Jesus is arrested, a young man follows him but runs away when the soldiers try to seize him. Many believe the young man may have been John Mark, the writer of the Gospel Mark. Right? So everyone else runs away, but Jesus does not. Right? He stands firm, ready to fulfill God's plan. When others flee fear, Jesus remains faithful. Verses 53 to 65, we see Jesus is taken before the high priest, where every religious council gathers. False witnesses accuse him, but their testimonies do not agree. Finally, the high priest asks Jesus directly if he's the Messiah. Jesus responds, I am, and you will see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of the power and coming with the cloud of heaven. The council accuses him of blasphemy and condemns him. Here, Jesus openly declares his identity as the Son of Man, a title connected with the vision of the book of Daniel. Even while facing condemnation, Jesus boldly proclaims the truth. Right? Jesus' authority and identity remains unshaken even when rejected. Verses 66 to 72, while Jesus is on trial, Peter Apostle waits in the courtyard. 3 times people accuse Peter of being with Jesus. Each time he denies it. And immediately the third time when he rejected it, the rooster crows as Jesus had predicted. Peter then realizes what he had done and breaks down in tears. Peter's failure shows how easily fear can overwhelm even the most devoted follower. Yet later Jesus will restore and continue using him for his mission, because that's the first thing Jesus does when he resurrects. He goes all the way to the Sea of Galilee and restores Peter. Even when we fail, God's grace can restore us. So what are some of the key takeaways? Jesus stood firm. He boldly declared the truth even when facing death. Even strong disciples like Peter can fail, right? Grace brings restoration. Failure is not the end when we return to Christ. So the encouragement is these passages remind us the story of salvation does not depend on human perfection. The disciples failed, denied, and fled, but Jesus remains faithful. Because of his faithfulness, believers today can find forgiveness, restoration, and courage to follow him again. So I hope this encouraged you. The pressure is off because of that. It's God's grace, but we can't take it for granted. Have a wonderful Saturday. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.